I'm going to get back for you. And then they'll basically get a payment. And then, this lawyer will make his payment, and that's
Didn't change that much in his life.
the land.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it didn't. Well, I don't know. Like, maybe there's tremendous potential, but it didn't sound like he cared very much. Like, it sounded like he was like, whatever. It's like, it's free money. If it works out, good. If not, not. He's not chasing his land. He's not like, I don't even think he feels that. I don't even think he feels that he has rights. It's my rights. He doesn't even feel like.
Does he have to pay taxes on it?
No.
It's all free and clear.
Second. Hello?
Have to be.
Mark Town, how are you?
Can't be.
What's up? Just about to get class.
The government's always gonna get there.
Oh, which one? Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I'll play back after. Are you in California? All right, sure. Yeah, sure. I don't know the terms or anything like that. I don't know any of the terms.
I don't know. I can real answers, but I would think so. They're always
I don't know any of the terms or anything like that. I don't know, but I just know that, I know what just happened. In those ancient places, like people have old deeds, very old deeds. So, I don't know. Like this guy's definitely not planning on moving there. How you doing, Mark? I don't know why this slideshow isn't working yet. Just give me a minute. Well, we have a couple minutes. It's plugged in. Yeah, it's in the two. I don't know why it's not working. I'm just having another. I have a lot of issues with my wires.
No.
That we get a discount. Oh, okay. No, 84.
All right, let's try this again. Let's try the magic here again. Let's take this. We plug it in.
Did an 11-year-old kid outside.
I don't think restarting the computer will work, when it might.
You have an 8-year?
Yeah, get an 8-year-old.
I have my daughter actually wants to sit in this class. She may be able to do it. I have a bunch of wires like at home. I bought a lot of new ones just in case one's not working.
You see it on your screen?
I see it on my screen.
You have it set to project.
I have it set to project.
That's all the seconds.
I'm not very good.
So big. There you go. Oh, there. Ah, okay.
1 second.
It's blowing on the end of it.
All right, 1 second. All right, now I just got to get it on YouTube. Give me a minute. One thing at a time. This here?
Yeah, that you?
No, I think it's actually, it must be like Bill Gates or something. Because this is the regular Windows,
Yeah, that.
all right, let's,
Change that to, and that to.
right.
I think you're right. Smells like rain for stuff, this way you do it.
All right.
No.
Hopefully it's gonna be your fault.
Our dog.
Yes.
Oh, hey, there we go.
She has a funny shirt. You know, and then. Tells, and then you bring her in, this thing, that not loud, and then cover her. And then she falls asleep. He's home alone. Yeah, so that's. She doesn't want me, yeah.
All right, we'll just wait another minute. A couple of people arriving. All right. That's showing there?
But it doesn't work. Look at that. You don't have that. It's like a switch. And so you up like this. Oh, wow. If it's like that, then you get your full sound. If you use this, then it comes up red. And it's really.
So here.
Mine, also grow grass.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, just give me one more second. We'll get this. All right. All right, no one's doing this.
There you go.
Okay, finally. Okay, let's get started. So my share screen is not working for tonight, so I'll do the recording will be to the tomorrow's class. That's work by then. But yeah, this is on YouTube. There's some people who actually only listen. They don't even watch the screen. They just like listen in the background. Okay, so welcome to lesson 5. It's hard to believe it's already been 5 weeks. There's only 1 week left. We've covered a lot of different subjects here. And today we are going to cover a very, very important one. I mentioned last week, I said this is going to send a monkey wrench in what we studied. We studied last week how the body dies, the soul goes on to Gehenna for 12 months, and then it goes to Gan Eden, it goes to paradise. And that's seemingly, as far as we know, that's the final stop. We'll find out that it's not the final stop next week. But for this week, we're going to talk about reincarnation. Reincarnation is when the soul comes back to the world. So reincarnation, we have a question. How do you feel about the concept of reincarnation? Are you fascinated with it? Or maybe are you charmed, or does it disturb you? So just these are some different perspectives. I don't think most people it disturbs them. There's a lot of people who might not believe in it. A lot of people might not believe in it. Let's just see. We need another chair. Oh, there's a chair at the corner there, Myrna, if you'd like. Front row. Okay. So how do you feel about reincarnation? So, some people are fascinated with it. Anything beyond life is fascinating. The soul goes on, and now it's even cooler. It comes back. Some people are disturbed by it. Some people feel, wow, connection to the past. We have answers of why things are a certain way. In a previous life, it was one way, and in this life, it has to be another way. There's some really great stories, and unfortunately today, we gave a class on reincarnation a few times. I believe you were there. The Rice were there years ago. Yeah, I believe so. We gave a few times, and we focus a lot of the fascinating actual stories that we know of. Today, we're not going to focus on so many fascinating stories. We're going to talk about if we believe in it, the mechanism, what it means, how it works. But some people feel like, wow, it's a really cool subject. And some people feel it's kind of disturbing. It's kind of like, are you telling me my life isn't my life? I mean, some people discuss, my body, my choice, but now we're talking about your life. Your life's actually not your life. It was a previous life that things happen and things are messed up nowadays because they were messed up in a previous lifetime. Some people feel like, I already have so much baggage. I don't need more baggage from a previous life. 10 previous lives, goodness. On the other hand, for some people, it's relieving. They feel like, wow, I struggle so much with this. It's good to know that I'm the pinnacle of this soul coming down and getting to fix this from previous lives. It was such a sad story if you would know that story. And now we get to fix it. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how those who are disturbed and feel like, takes away from their independence. We're going to talk about the Jewish perspective and how it works. And we're going to talk about some interesting things. Before, we're going to do an exercise. This is a little tricky exercise. It's not really tricky questions. Just a lot of them don't really have a yes or no. So true or false? And we can do this by raise of hands. Raise your hand if you think it's true. Don't raise your hand if you think it's false. If you want, you can write it inside and see how it comes up. But true or false? Belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism. True? Raise your hand if you think that's true. All right. In Jewish view of so I guess that time it seems like most people don't think it's basic to Judaism. Okay. In the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. True or false? True? Raise your hand if you think it's true. Raise your hand if you think it's true. Well, raise your hand if you think Judaism thinks it's true, right? Okay. Question 3. A human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity, such as an animal or plant. What do you think? True or raise your hand if you think it's true. All right, we got one person who thinks it's true. People want to know, is my pet a human from a previous life, right? Well, we'll see. Number 5, the purpose of doing, number 4. A reincarnated soul does have its own identity, but does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. True or false? I want to tell you, a lot of these questions are tough questions because the answers are all kind of like, we'll see. All right. 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current life is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. Anyone think that's true? All right, crickets. Okay. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. Anyone think that's true? Anyone? No? Okay. Most souls today are reincarnations. Anyone think that's true? All right, we got it.
Yes.
Seems like we got maybe 50%. Before we go further, by the way, like, if you were silent, that means you meant false, right? Just let me let you know. Okay. Before we go further, we can start off and say that, in fact, reincarnation is a Jewish belief. We'll talk about if it's a basic Jewish belief later, but it is a Jewish belief. The soul does become reincarnated, and actually, we will read, there's different origins in Judaism where this is from, but we are going to actually read from a prayer. We will read from a prayer. This is a prayer that people say before they say Shema every night. And we're going to say, if you read text 1, Rachel, you worked so hard to get it, you get to the first text.
Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who is angered or vexed me, or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this incarnation or in any other.
All right, so this is in our basic prayers. We say, I hereby forgive anybody, whether in this incarnation or another one, right? So in Judaism, we do believe in reincarnation. Very good question. I don't know. Nah. The Hebrew word for reincarnation is Gilgul. A Gilgul literally means a wheel. It means like a wheel. It's like you keep coming down, keep coming down. Yeah, take any chair. I believe there's a broken chair, and if it's here, I need to throw it out. It keeps getting mixed. So if it's that one there, if you could fold it and, like, I don't know, I need to mark it and put it in the trash. Okay. So the Hebrew word is Gilgul. So now we are going to today, we're not going to get into that forgiveness thing. I hereby forgive everybody. That's another topic of its own. We actually gave a course on it at the beginning of the year about relationships. Forgiveness could be a tough thing. Our goal here is we're going to get into what reincarnation is based on the studies of Kabbalah. Now, some people ask every class, they say, but Rabbi, is there any evidence of this? Is there any evidence of reincarnation? How do you know this is true? And I usually say, boy, I never thought about that before. But of course I did, right? Of course I did. How do I know it's true? Well, the truth is if I think something's true, that doesn't make it true, right? Because I'm just a regular person like anybody else. However, the Jewish belief can think something's true, right? So the Jewish belief, evidence for reincarnation is the Kabbalists. The Kabbalists now what is Kabbalah? Where actually our fall course, which is going to start in the week of November 2nd, is called Kabbalah of Meaning. Kabbalah of Meaning. It's a Kabbalah course. But Kabbalah is our Jewish tradition passed down through mystics through Moses. Now, what Kabbalah it means is if you're reading the scripture, you will not figure it out. You will not figure it out based on the rules of studying scripture. Kabbalah means it was passed down. Now, Kabbalists build on the Kabbalistic tradition based on what's passed down. Kabbalah means received. Kabbalah means received. It means it has to have been received going back to the cycle of rabbis going back to Moses. It is interesting, but a long time ago, I gave a class on, does Judaism believe in reincarnation? And today, we are not giving a class about that. We already answered the question. Judaism does believe in reincarnation, right? It's a Jewish belief. But I gave a class once about if Judaism believes in reincarnation or not. Now, what was the question? If we look in the medieval rabbis in the 9th century, 10th century, 11th century, we see it's a hot debate. It's a hot debate. Some rabbis say no, some rabbis say yes. They're all trying to dig out, where did the belief come from? Now, this was the conclusion. The conclusion of the rabbis was, in that time, is they said, reincarnation is not something you figure out, and it's not something you use to answer questions in life. if it's a Jewish belief, it has to have been passed down, and it's easy to accept because it's a Jewish belief. If it is not a Jewish belief, it's not like we observed somebody had a dream or think something like magician came and said, oh, people are reincarnated. So what we see in Jewish history is in the 9th century, 10th century, different rabbis questioned it. And they said, is there a Jewish belief? Because if there's no Jewish belief, we're not going to accept this. Later on, by the time the 14th century came about, rabbis confirmed, yes, there's a traceable Jewish belief of reincarnation going back to the biblical mysticism, going back to all times. And based on that, they said, yes, like all Judaism, how do we know Judaism is true? The answer is, it's passed down. It's passed down to us. It was passed down to us as true. Okay, no one can ever take away your choice if you want to believe something is true or not. No one can ever take away your choice. That's your choice. But historically, we cannot deny that many Jewish people, almost all Jewish people throughout history, believed reincarnation was a real thing. Okay, now that I put that down, we can leave that. Okay, let's get to reincarnation. So here was our question. Last week, we spoke about going to hell, right? You can go to Gan Eden, heaven, but first you go to Gehenna. You go to Gehenna. So where does this fit in? If the soul is reincarnated, you die, and then you come back to earth, when do you go to hell? When do you go to Gehenna? And where do you go to Gan Eden? So that's a question we're going to need to answer today. And don't worry, we will. Okay, so let's get to the story of reincarnation. So before we talk about the mechanism about it, we are going to talk about someone who is very, very special. His name was Adam, right? Adam. Now, who was Adam? Anyone know? First human, first man, right? Yes, men came before women. First man, right? And Eve was, of course, the first woman. Now, this is what it says. This is what it says. Now, in order to understand reincarnation, we have to understand the history of souls. And what we're actually going to do is there's a book called Shar HaGilgulim. Someone showed me an English translation. It's only a section of it. A lot of it is on actually Chabad.org has a Kabbalah section, which has a lot of Shar HaGilgulim, which means the gates of reincarnation. Most of it was passed down. So there was a rabbi in the 16th century, the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, was a great Kabbalist. And he felt that because Jewish people had been suffering so much, I mean, thousands of Jews were burned at the stake during that era, he needs to reveal to them that there's something more going on than what you see in this world. Because the pain in this world was too much, right? So he taught his students all sorts of mystical teachings. And one of the things he taught was Gilgulim, reincarnation. And he literally went to the cemetery and he said, okay, this person who died, his soul was this person in a previous life. He came to this and came to that. And now he's that guy living there in Sfat nowadays. And the reason why he has this issue is because in his previous life, he has to rectify that issue. And he taught that to give examples to his students to have an understanding how there's more to life than what we see. Because in his era, and sometimes nowadays also, pain adds up in our lives, suffering adds up in our life. And if there's no more than what we see, we can't take it. So he was post-Inquisition, he was living in Israel, and there were people who were suffering. There was intense poverty, all sorts of sicknesses, all sorts of enemies surrounding Israel. And he said, I'm going to teach my students there's more to life than what they see. One of the ways he did this was in Shar HaGilgulim, and it was transcribed by his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital. And in the book, he writes, you're a reincarnation of this person, and I'm a reincarnation of this person, and I came down to be your teacher, you came down to be my student in order for me to teach you this. I mean, it's extremely, extremely profound. Now, I want to point out that there are sources which say that Jews and Gentiles alike have reincarnation. But the most discussion of it is about Jewish people, by Jews, about Jews. So that's mainly, we're going to talk about the Jewish role in reincarnation today. So we're going to start, and we're going to read straight from that book, Shar HaGilgulim. There is an English version. I can imagine it's quite hard to understand, because in my Hebrew version, it has a really good commentary in the bottom. My Hebrew version is, I believe, 2 or 3 volumes. It's long, it's very detailed, very, very complex. I will note that it's very complex how to say a fact. And then a few pages later, it'll go and contradict the fact, but explain how that fact is in a very specific context. So it grows like this tree of, it's almost like this vast science where you have to kind of read it cover to cover, which is very difficult, and have this vast understanding of the subject. So we're going to just touch it today. I apologize, but we have to work within our time limit. So we'll read text 2. If you could read text 2. This is from Shara Gugula.
His master soul passed on to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and was then divided among 12 tribes. Afterward, his soul was further partitioned among the 70 souls, the descendants of Jacob that accompanied him to Egypt, and eventually among the 600,000 souls who left Egypt.
Okay, so this is really interesting. You got the first soul is Adam. And we're talking about this special Jewish soul. It goes into Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. This soul goes into the 12 tribes. Then there are 70 souls in Jacob's family who come down to Egypt, the Torah says. And this is all just a reading of the Torah. And then how many Jewish males leave Egypt? 600,000. So he says 600,000. What is the significance of 600,000? There are 600,000 root Jewish souls. 600,000, right? That's what he says so far. So what we have here is we have like this process of a tree, right? The soul keeps getting kind of divided into 600,000 souls. And in Judaism, we believe that we start with there's 600,000 souls. Okay, now let's go on further. Text 3. Back to Shara Gogolim. So 1 second. So there's 600,000 souls, right? Now, how many Jews are there nowadays? A lot more than that. So what's going on? Keep that in the back of your mind, right? Only 600,000 are really Jews. Nah, that's not true, right? That's not true, right? What? Oh, so 600,000 are root souls. So go on, yeah.
Furthermore, you must know that every person must fulfill all of the 613 mitzvah. If a soul does not fulfill all 613 mitzvah in action, speech, and thought, it must be reincarnated. That completes them all.
Okay, so these 600,000 souls come down, yes? What? The mitzvahs in the Bible, in the Torah. 613 in the Torah. Yeah. It's hard to find them in the Torah unless you study many years. Luckily, there's several rabbis who made lists. You can find them online. Maimonides was one of the most famous. He took the 613. Because some of them God doesn't necessarily say do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. If he did that, we would all get too bored, right? So you had to say stories and extrapolating and everything like that. Okay. So each of these 600,000 souls, they're coming out of Egypt. And what do? They receive the Torah, right? They receive the Torah. The Torah has how many mitzvahs? 613. So they all have to do 613 mitzvahs. Now, generally speaking, the purpose of mitzvahs, now there's 365 negative mitzvahs, 248 positive mitzvahs, and not all of them are relevant to every person in every time. But these souls all got to do them. So all these 600,000 souls, number one, our job is to reveal God in the world, right? And this is what God tells us at Sinai. He says the job of the Jewish people is to reveal that God is here and transform into a godly edifice. That is our purpose in the world. That is humanity's purpose in the world. God created a world which seems godless for our job to reveal God in the world. We do it by fulfilling all 613 mitzvahs. That's how we fulfill our mission in the world. So all these souls, they come into their body. They have their section in the world. They have their house, their home, their finances, their assets, whatever it is. And their job is to do that. And every single one has their unique context. Now, when we do that, when they would fulfill them, we rectify and we complete our mission. We fix our body, our soul, we transform the world, and now our soul has fulfilled its mission. The problem is what if the soul does not fulfill all 613 mitzvahs? So this idea, and again, I can't do the mitzvahs for you. You got to do it for yourself, right? You got to do it for yourself. So everyone's got to do it. All these souls got to do it. So what happens if we do not fulfill all 613 mitzvahs? So this is the idea of Gilgul reincarnation. Gilgul means we come back down, and it's actually in order that our soul is able to come down and complete the mitzvahs that it didn't do, right? So in one lifetime, we didn't fulfill everything we're supposed to do. So then we get another opportunity. Our soul comes back down into our body in order that we fulfill our mitzvahs that we didn't do yet. Yeah.
That was the impression from previous reading, talk, that everybody's mission in this world is different.
Yes.
What you're implying is that everybody's mission is to fulfill the 613 orders that came through them.
Well, so if we look at the 613 mitzvot, everyone does it in a different place, in a different time, in a different way, right? So yes, the purpose of life is to do mitzvot. That's the purpose of life. But everyone's mitzvot are important. Everyone has their own independent mitzvot, their own independent job that they bring to the world. So like, this is something really important, actually. When you do a mitzvah, the job isn't that the mitzvah gets done. Your job isn't that the mitzvah gets done. Your job is equally that you do the mitzvah, right? So it's like everybody did the mitzvah. So sometimes, I mean, we're programmed sometimes, the post-Holocaust generation, sometimes we're like, someone did the mitzvah, so the continuity of the mitzvah is continuing. But that's not enough. Everyone has to do the mitzvahs themselves and rectify themselves, their own body, their own life. It's like, imagine I would say, my dentist said, you better brush your teeth. I'd say, Stan brushes his teeth, right, for me, right? No, I got to brush my own teeth, right? I can't say, the rabbi does it for me, right? I give the rabbi a donation, and he brushes his teeth for me. I can't do that. Everyone has to do it themselves. So mitzvahs are the purpose of this world. Mitzvahs are the purpose of this world. When we do a mitzvah, we bring godly conscious and we connect ourselves and God to the world, and we enhance that relationship, and everyone has their own unique mission. Okay, so reincarnation allows us to complete the mission that we may have not finished. But it's not only about the mitzvahs. Let's see text 4. If you could read text 4 in the back.
That each individual must study all four of the Torah flavors, which are referred to by their titles. These are Peshat, Remez, Darush, and Pshat, literal, allusion, exegetic, and mystical. It is necessary for a soul to be reincarnated repeatedly until complete the knowledge.
All right. So not only does every soul have to do all 613 mitzvahs, every soul has to go and study the Torah. And actually, there's 4 layers of Torah study. So every soul has to study all 4 layers of Torah study. So there's quite a lot to do in one lifetime. Now, what are the 4 layers? This is actually really interesting. We're going to watch a little video now, so it's going to explain.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally, and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elohim es hashemayim ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarify the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is remez, allusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first two words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. Our third layer of understanding is drush, interpretive. Our sages extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and to never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, the word Bereshis can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning he created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes, from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the four layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
So let's go through it. There's 4 layers of Torah study, 4 layers of depth. The acronym of them is Pardes. Pardes means the orchard. So you have Pshat as the simple explanation. You have Remez, hints, allusions, numerical values. Drush is the expounding or extrapolating. And then you have Sod, which is the hidden esoteric explanation. Now, every soul needs to go through all 4 layers of Torah study. It's quite a big amount of things to study in one lifetime. Furthermore, within these 4 lessons, 4 ways of studying Torah, 4 layers, there's many, many more. So take the simple explanation, Pshat. There are many medieval commentaries who teach pshat, and they argue there's different ways of pshat, and it's the same with all of these. It's not like, oh, there's only 4 ways to study everything. Really, there are many, many ways to study, even amongst the commentators that we have. They have all sorts of layers within each of these layers. So there's many, many layers to study. In fact, in the Zohar, it says that actually every verse and idea in Torah, there are 600,000 ways to understand, right? Now, on one hand, that's a lot to study. On the other hand, there's significance. We each have every soul has its way, unique way of understanding something. When your soul understands something, you can't understand something for somebody else, just like you can't do a mitzvah for somebody else. Everyone has to do the mitzvahs themselves. Every soul has to understand it in their own unique way. Now, with this, we can understand a special prayer. If you come here at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, we sing this prayer. Not a lot of people come then, though, so they wouldn't know it. But we also say it at the end of the Amidah. Don't worry, people come Saturdays. They just come like 10:30, 11. Okay. There's also, we say this at the end of the Amidah. So if you can read text 5a.
God of our Father, the holy temple can be built, speedily in our day, and grant us our portion before us.
All right, so we get it. We want the temple to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. That's an important thing. So we say, may it be your will, God, that the temple be built in Jerusalem. But we also add in it, and grant us our portion in your Torah. V'sein chalkenu, give us our portion in your Torah. What exactly are we asking for? What are we asking for? You want to read next, Wendy? Text 5b.
As explained in numerous sources, the soul of each Jew has a specific segment of the Torah with which it is particularly associated. This explains the phrasing of our sage's statement, grant us our portion in your Torah. Our portion implies that each of us has a unique portion within the Torah. This concept is further expressed in our sage's statement that there are novel Torah concepts that an accomplished student of the Torah is destined to introduce. In other words, the entire universe anticipates the birth of this particular diligent student, awaiting the moment that the student innovates, meaning uncovers this specific concept within the Torah. For this concept is this student's portion in the Torah.
So after we die, we need to be reincarnated to take care of these 3 things. Souls, after they die, they have to reincarnate it till they complete all 613 mitzvahs. They have to study all 4 layers of the Torah. And then they also have to each soul has to reveal its unique portion in the Torah. Its unique portion of the Torah. And after that, well, we're done. After that, our soul has done its work. And then what? And then we can go to heaven. Okay, and then we can go to heaven, right? Okay, so now let's talk about that. Now, last week, the last couple of weeks, people have been asking, I want to help the souls of the deceased, my relatives, etc., etc. Some, maybe they died in the last year. I don't want them to be in Gehenna, and they come give me tzedakah. And they say, we want to donate this or dedicate or just give charity or do a mitzvah in their honor. And then I say, oh, wow, I'm sure. And lo and behold, whoever they did it for is still alive. They're reincarnated. I want my money back, right? They're back here on earth. What's going on here? So now we're going to talk about the mechanism, how actually when a soul comes back, it is not the exact same soul. It's not the same soul. They're at the same time that souls go on to heaven and go through Gehenna, mitzvahs in honor of them, etc., etc. Each souls have spin-offs, so to speak, that come back into the world. And that's what we'll read, text 6. And this is once again from Shar HaGilgulim.
Although you stated in passages of this treatise that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person,
and I'm subsequently reincarnated as another specific individual, and so on. Do not misread this as that the original soul itself has reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Every root contains an infinite quantity of soul stalks. Each subsequent reincarnation, number of the stalks are rectified, and they ascend to the driving rewards of heaven, and dwell in a particular strata of God Eden that are appropriate to them. However, those soul sparks that was not rectified are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification.
Okay, so now let's understand the mechanism of the soul here. It's a little bit tricky, so hold on. So every soul, there's 600,000 souls, right? And we're going to call them the stem souls. They have sparks, so to speak, sparks of God. These sparks of God, when you do a mitzvah, that spark is brought over, returned to God. When somebody sins, that spark kind of gets disconnected from God. When somebody dies, all their sparks return to God that they rectified, and their soul that goes to God, goes to Gan Eden. Now what happens is you have all of these sparks, these potential mitzvahs that weren't done. So the soul, so to speak, regenerates another piece of soul, which comes down to rectify those sparks. So when somebody dies, when somebody dies, the same soul doesn't come back. Part of that soul comes back. So everyone wants to know, reincarnation means that part of the soul that either didn't finish a job comes back to finish a job. Part of the soul is generated from that soul in order to complete its potential spark job, bring its sparks back to God. So now, rectified sparks are when mitzvahs are done properly. So you did a mitzvah properly and you completed, in other words, you fulfilled the job in the world, right? You fulfilled the job that you were meant to do. Unrectified sparks, it might have been mitzvahs that a soul was meant to do and failed to do, or it might be a violation. It did a violation, right? And that violation, in other words, you were not supposed to sin, the soul was not supposed to sin, and it did. So part of the soul needs to come back to fix those sparks. Now, there are different types. So the rectified sparks go to the soul, they go to Gan Eden, they get to enjoy their relationship. The soul gets to go with those and enjoy its relationship with God. The unrectified sparks, they become the new sparks, the sparks for a new soul to come off that soul, to branch off that soul, to come down. So you have 600,000 souls, and parts of the soul keep coming down in different people to rectify different jobs, different sparks. Now, sometimes Gehenna is enough for it to rectify a sin. Someone did something wrong, so they go to Gehenna and it rectifies that sin and the soul can ascend. However, sometimes what happens is the sin is really bad and for whatever reason, it is not able to rectify it in Gehenna, or the mitzvah was not done, it wasn't kept properly. So part of the soul comes down in a new soul, in a new being, and fulfills that job. In the book Reishis Chachma, which is another mystical book, it says, sometimes you have someone with affliction of a limb. Sometimes you can heal that affliction, but sometimes amputation is necessary, right? There are different sicknesses. Same thing with sin. Sometimes the soul has to come back down to the world to rectify something wrong. Sometimes it can do it in the spiritual process of Gehenna. So here is a summary of how it works. You have the 600,000 souls. There's only 600,000 of them. Now the 600,000 souls have all these mitzvahs they need to do. They come down to the world. Many did not complete all the mitzvahs. So parts of that soul come down to fulfill the sparks, the mitzvahs, which were not yet completed. And this is what reincarnation is. So now our souls, as we'll talk about how they are reincarnated, they're not exactly the same person. Every soul actually has its own identity. And we'll talk about resurrection of the dead next week. Every soul has its own identity. However, every soul branched off of these general souls. Making sense here? Any questions? Any questions?
It's all questions.
All right, so let me just add. What we call sparks, what our Rizal calls sparks, are in the world, we live in a material, physical, scientific world, right? However, in the world, there are spiritual sparks. God, is kind of compared to like a fire in the Torah. The sparks are little pieces of God throughout the world. When we do a mitzvah, we eat kosher, we keep Shabbat, we give tzedakah. Let's say, give tzedakah, I put a coin in the charity box. The spark of God, which is in that coin, which we can't see, it's spiritual, it returns to God. Externally, what did I do? I took something that is mundane, which is mine, and I gifted it to God. I revealed God in it. Our purpose in the world, in life, is to reveal God in the world. That's our purpose in life, right? So the Arizal, the way he refers to it is as sparks. There's sparks in the world. The sparks in the soul are the potential mitzvahs. When the soul does a mitzvah in this world, it reveals its connection to God in this world. So what it's doing is it's revealing that there's a spark of God somewhere in the world. The soul needs to come down, bring back all its sparks to God. It needs to bring back all its sparks. What happens is the soul needs to come down several times. Parts of the soul keep coming down to fulfill their godly potential in this world. That is the general mechanism of how reincarnation works. All right, well, let's get to the next subject. So we mentioned reincarnation is a mechanism that our soul is able to, parts of our soul are able to come down, the general souls, the stem souls, parts of them are able to come down to fulfill different missions, to rectify things for this general soul. So yeah, that's right. People are actually connected soul-wise. It's possible you could have two people who are coming from the same soul, right? And they would never know. There's another type of reincarnation, which is called impregnation. Partial reincarnation, and we're going to read about that. So let's see. This is in Shara Gilgulim. We'll read text 7a.
The concept of Gilgul reincarnation is that a soul requiring further rectification enters the body of a child as it emerges from its mother's womb to serve as a newborn soul. It has no permission to leave that individual until the person's destined day of death. By contrast, the concept of Ibur, soul impregnation, is that the soul enters an adult body that is already inhabited by its soul. The person's primary soul received at birth. In this case, the individual is merely impregnated with a dead soul in addition to harboring a primary soul. The individual then carries the extra soul, much as a woman carries a child in her womb. So this type of reincarnation is actually called Ibur. Ibur means pregnant. What happens is everybody, when they're born, a soul is injected in a body which gives life. And again, the soul is a part of the stem soul which comes down to this world for a specific mission, which has to do with the 613 mitzvahs. Now, sometimes in your life, and we wouldn't be aware of it, it's super subconscious, a second soul may be injected into us, right? And we might be carrying two souls. Just we have our original soul that we were born with, right? That was breathed into us by God when we were born. And then we have this second soul hanging out with us. Now, why would a second soul hang out with us? Now, the second soul, sometimes it stays with us till the end of our life. Sometimes it comes and goes, right? Why would we? Anyone want to guess?
We know we have.
We don't, well,
Do we sense?
let's read 7b. Well, let's read 7b. I don't know if we sense it, but I always kind of imagine that maybe sometimes you could.
A soul experiences. A, the impregnated soul comes to an individual for its own sake. In its previous life, it failed to perform a particular mitzvah and was therefore left lacking. This was the kind of mitzvah that was impossible to perform under the conditions of that lifetime, such as the mitzvah of Nibun, Chalitza, and the like. It is therefore not obligated to engage in a full-scale incarnation, described earlier in this treatise, for soul impregnation is sufficient. B, the impregnated soul comes solely to assist an individual, to bring a person additional merit, or to guide an individual in matters of Torah and mitzvot. In this case, the impregnated soul lacks nothing for itself.
Okay, so let's talk about these two things. Every soul's got to do 613 mitzvahs. Now, what happens if you're really a good husband? You never get to do the mitzvah of divorce, right? You really were a good husband. You never got to do the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah in certain circumstances to give a divorce, right? We don't just divorce, go to court. There's a mitzvah way of doing it. Or we have levirate marriages. Levirate marriages means a husband dies, they have no children. The wife needs to marry a brother, right? A brother. So what happens if the husband didn't die without children? This soul doesn't get to do the mitzvah, right? So whose fault is it that this soul doesn't get to do the mitzvah? Does God want people to be good husbands and wives? Yeah, God wants people to be good. So we would never say like, I better mess things up so I could do the mitzvah of divorce. We would never say that, right? So sometimes God takes that soul and he joins that soul with another soul that is going through that mitzvah in order that they don't have to go through a full lifetime in order to complete it. They're able to just join someone who's going through that mitzvah, and that soul can get it over with that way, right? That's an example of Ivor. So the soul didn't do anything. The soul doesn't want to do anything wrong. It did a good job in its marriage, right? We don't want the soul to have to get divorced. So God sets up that soul will ride on somebody else who, whatever reason, needs to get divorced in order that the mitzvah can happen through them, right? So that is an example. Now, truthfully, there's actually layers and layers of different examples. We're not going to go into them now. So that is the example that he brings. So again, a mitzvah that your soul was not able to do, not because the soul was irresponsible or made a mistake, but because the circumstances that God created did not allow the soul to do that mitzvah. Sometimes what God will do is he will send that soul to join another soul when it's completing that mitzvah in order the soul could be rectified. Make sense? Got it? Okay. That is one version of Ibur. Yeah? Questions? What? No. We're typically not aware of soul stuff. Human beings are just conscious of physical stuff. And our spiritual level of consciousness is very, very low. Yeah.
Nature, personality change, or
Okay, so the next thing is,
sometime late in life, something.
okay, so the is to assist the soul. In other words, this soul has to rectify something. It never got the opportunity. It'll be a big job to give the soul a whole lifetime. The soul's doing really well. It did all the other mitzvahs. Really going to make it live a whole lifetime just so it can get divorced, right? Now, again, the truth of Gilgal, the science of it, is so vast and so godly. Only God knows exactly which souls go where. We are only just get a taste of it in order to understand how to live our lives, which we'll discuss soon. Yeah. That's an example. Yeah. Yeah.
So then there's another soul. I don't know if we're talking about the person who's going through a divorce, is dead or alive, and I'm just thinking, the soul of the good husband, does it go to the soul of a person who's actually alive? Divorce, like that whole thing wrong.
Yes. Well, so let me explain. Every soul has to do all 613 mitzvahs. In our lifetime, we don't always have the opportunity to do all 613 mitzvahs. We don't get the opportunity. So what God does sometimes is he has one soul piggyback on another soul that's alive in this world, right? So this soul died and he's like, oh man, I got to be born again. Remember we talked about how hard it is to be born, right? I got to be born again in order to do this mitzvah. So God sometimes, for the soul's benefit, says, no, you're actually going to piggyback. And there's many, many examples in the Torah. I don't have time to, maybe after the class, I'll throw some examples out there. But where somebody was not able to do something for a certain reason, and instead of needing to come and live a whole long life, they were able to come and piggyback on another soul in order to get a certain job done, experience a certain mitzvah.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't talk to me about it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Really, identical twins? We'll talk about it. These things don't really reflect in our body. When, people go and they do, I was joking, it was a joke. When people, she's an identical twin. So when people talk about spirituality nowadays, meditation, different Far Eastern meditations, they're really a different category, a different subject. And I'll tell you what the difference is. The reason I'm saying this is to understand the spiritual subconscious for us, what the context of it, it's really out of this world. It's really, really out of this world. And I'll explain what I mean. Most spirituality in the world is people digging into their consciousness and trying to experience something which is transcendent and otherworldly, right? They're trying to go out of their consciousness. You might do that by meditation, a substance, right? All sorts of different things. Now, the common denominator of almost all spirituality in this world is it starts with the person, a physical being, and they're trying to. Jewish spirituality is the exact opposite. We say we don't know anything, we're humans. We want to know what God says from above, right? So like I might say like, oh, you guys are twins, it must mean this, it must mean that. The question is, am I sharing my human translated experience? Because your human translated experience is just you in the end of the day. It revolves around you. It revolves around your ability to dig deeper in your subconscious or deeper into spiritual realms. But the Torah perspective of the these things, they're going from the other direction. They're not saying like, oh, I experienced this. They're saying, I'm sharing godly truth with you. Oh, it doesn't resonate with me. Well, I'm sorry, you're not a good resonator, right? You don't need to resonate with it because it's beyond us. So all these soul things are really deeply beyond us. As we'll say, we'll talk about what we can learn from it, and we'll definitely talk about that today. But if you guys thought you're gonna come here today and I'm gonna be like, you were this in this previous life, you were that in this previous life. If I was doing that, I don't know if I would live in Prescott. I would be really famous, or I would probably be a little bit out of my mind, right? So that's the honest truth. So that's the important thing about Jewish spirituality. That's very, very important to remember. Yes.
There are 10 or 15 million Jewish people in the world. 600,000 original souls. Is there an infinite number of soul portions from those 600,000 to make all of this possible?
I don't know if it would say infinite, but God takes Abraham and he shows him the stars. He shows him the stars. Yeah, there are many, many parts these souls can generate as long as necessary to fulfill the job, right? So these souls will generate until we fill the job of transforming the world. So but all those Jewish souls, they all go back to those 600,000. Yeah.
The concept of
Yeah. It's not there are contexts where it's a mitzvah to get divorced, right? If certain things in the marriage are really so bad, right? Right? Well, no, like infidelity and things like that, right? There is a context for that. There are different contexts. The idea is there's certain mitzvahs where life has to give you the opportunity to do the mitzvah, and God didn't give you the opportunity. So whose fault is it that you didn't do the mitzvah, right? It's not my fault, it's God's fault, right? So sometimes souls come in and they piggyback on another life in order to fulfill that mitzvah. Yeah.
think of divorce as being negative. So would that be part of the 600 years?
So a mitzvah means a commandment. Now, divorce is negative, right? But if someone needs to get divorced or wants to get divorced, they have to do it the way it's commanded in the Torah, right? So now, sometimes a divorce might have a context where it's necessity, sometimes not. Sometimes someone might just be an idiot, right? But they still have to get divorced the way God commanded to do it. God might say, I don't want you to get divorced, but if you are going to get divorced, you have to do it the way I said, right? So some guy was successful in his marriages and he never wanted to get divorced. They were never able to do it. So he might have to piggyback on somebody getting divorced in order to fulfill that mitzvah. Okay, now the other type of ibur we said is to assist. So ibur is typically to assist the host soul. There are other times that they come to assist the Ibur can come to assist the person. Now, I'll give you a quick example. We spoke about a tzaddik. A tzaddik is somebody who is purely righteous, zero self-interest. Do you know anyone with no self-interest? Anyone? No, probably not, right? Most humans have self-interest. So who are these people with zero self-interest? Well, in Jewish thought, it says there's one or two every generation. God puts in a really righteous person who's like a rabbi who has zero self-interest, like Moses. And his job is to show people, he's purely altruistic. He shows people who are getting lost, he brings them back. So the Tanya talks about these righteous people. And it says, hey, what if I want to become one? Well, it says sometimes you can't become one because you are born as a human. You cannot become one. You have to be born righteous, born perfect. It says sometimes you can become one. How do you become one? If God injects a purely righteous soul on you. So we have different stories in the Torah where somebody did like a tremendous mitzvah or act of self-sacrifice, and God put in a righteous soul in them. It's almost like super spiritual powers. God put in like a righteous soul and changed them. And there is this idea in Judaism that, sometimes everybody, most people at least, think they are a certain way. They are a certain way. And they want to change, and they just can't break out and change. But sometimes they pray a lot and they work really, really hard, and they suddenly change to become a new person. What they struggle with is gone, right? Sometimes that happens. And in Jewish thought, it could be, I wouldn't know because I am not a soul surgeon, I'm a soul EMT. I could tell you how the soul works. I could tell you what to do for your soul, right? But I cannot perform surgeries and switch souls and stuff like that. It could be it's because Ibur, God put a new soul in the person. He put a soul of a really, really righteous person, and that gives that person a boost. I remember there was somebody here that came to visit me this year. He was here years before, and he was struggling with something really terrible for a long time. And then he told me, I said, hey, how's it going? He said, you'll never believe it. I turned like 40 years old, and I just don't struggle with it anymore. Now, I don't know why he doesn't struggle with it anymore, but I do. And I know some people might say like, well, you became an adult or whatever it is. But I know a lot of people who are much older who struggle with that, right? So we don't know. It's a mystery sometimes. But this is a second idea of Ibur. Okay, so we have two ideas of Ibur. Ibur means a soul piggybacks for its benefit. Or Ibur might be a soul piggybacks for the soul that is the host soul, the soul that's in the body. All right, now let's talk about animals. Can a soul come into non-human form? Now, it's notable that we believe everything in the world has godly energy. This isn't only animals. This might be, you might be reincarnated, someone could be reincarnated into a rock or a bottle of scotch, right? That could happen, right? So let's talk about that. Text 8.
When a human soul comes to the soul and becomes soiled by sin in the process, it reincarnates in another body to rectify itself. Thus, second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails to rectify itself during that lifetime, it may return in excessive reincarnation. If it again fails to find rectification, it may endure a third reincarnation. After that, however, it is no longer provided opportunities for rectification via reincarnation.
All right, so reincarnations can happen in animals, or they can happen in anything, right? Any substance or rock or anything. Reincarnations can happen. However, we said that they only happen after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations. So the soul comes down one time to fix something, fails, another time fails, another time fails. Then God might put it in something not human. Now we're going to talk about what that means. Is that a good thing? Do you want to look at your pet dog and be like, hey, who are you, right? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's go text 9. If you can read, oh yeah.
Right? Right. The limitation of twice the thrice applies with man, meaning that a human soul is not consequently reincarnated in the human body, rather than it's forced to wander the planet. Until it is reincarnated in an inanimate, vegetative animal entity. Then, after it has done its penance, it is called transfusion. God's endless mercies extend to all his created today.
All right, so this gets kind of funky, right? Okay, so this is what happens. Our souls have the job of performing mitzvahs. Sometimes there is a substance that our soul is meant to work with for a certain mitzvah, and it does not do it successfully 3 times. So what God does is he might, one of the ways of rectifying this is the soul has to go into that substance that it misused, into that animal or whatever it is, and then it goes there until it rectifies the soul, and then it can leave. I want to note that it is considered a really bad punishment because the soul is a human soul. Now, I love animals. I go to zoos and everything. I don't have any pets, but I love animals. I go hunting. No, I don't. Don't go hunting. I love animals, right? But animals are not as sophisticated as humans. So for the soul, can you imagine a soul which is so sophisticated and so powerful to do mitzvahs in the world to be an animal? It's very, very painful for the soul. But this is the process of rectifying, atoning for its lack of success in fulfilling its mission. And then it's able to go back into a human body after 3 times. So there's actually no point in Judaism where it's over. And it's like eternal hell or eternal suffering. Now, I'll share a quick story. There are many, many stories. There's some nice stories, actually, some beautiful stories in the appendixes here about reincarnation. But they say a story of the Baal Shem Tov. And I don't know all the details, but I remember the story was he went to a certain place traveling, and he went to wash his hands. We wash our hands in a very special way every morning. And right then a frog came, and right when the water hit it, it died. So, the students were there. They were kind of like, what was that? So the Baal Shem Tov explained he was a great mystic. He said that frog, there was a fellow who did not fulfill that mitzvah of washing his hands. And eventually he had to be reincarnated in that frog. Frogs live in the water. And by me washing the frog going under, his soul was rectified. And that's why the frog died, right? That's why the frog died, because his soul was rectified, and his soul is now free either to go to heaven or to go to a human body. So there are many, many stories of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov was the first Hasidic Rebbe. He was known to have a lot of mercy on these souls. A lot of mercy on these souls. And there are many, many stories where the Baal Shem Tov told somebody, this animal that you have, which you love, and whatever it is, it has to, you have to sell it, or you have to do this, do that, in order to rectify the soul that I can see inside of it. The Baal Shem Tov, like the Arizal, was like a seer. He was able to see the souls of creatures, right? So we believe that, we don't believe like other religions that, our souls kind of wander around and go into different creatures. But we do believe that sometimes the souls might go into an animal or a food that you encounter. And when you perform the mitzvah on that thing, you make a blessing, who knows, maybe you're elevating that soul that was in that wheat that made that bread. You're elevating that soul, and you're not only doing your mitzvah, but you're actually fixing that. All right, now we are going to talk about who we were. Animal or any item, any physical item. Until you rectify. What is the rectification? Something really creative from God. I could tell you there in the appendix, there's different stories of different mystics who are trying to save souls because they saw, hey, this is a human soul. It's just stuck in a blade of grass or whatever it was. We gotta do something about it. But it's all a process of rectification. It's all really good for the soul. It's good for the soul, right? So all these things. All right, now we're going to talk about who we were. Who are we? Okay. So as a general rule, I want to note that in Jewish philosophy, in the Zohar book, the original book of Jewish mysticism, it says that pretty much all the souls after the destruction of the temple era in Jerusalem, we are all reincarnated. Everyone's soul, except for a few exceptions, have been on earth many, many times. In other words, parts of that soul keep coming down. Parts of the soul keep coming down. And we need to finish the job. And when we finish our job in the world, bringing God in the world, completing all the mitzvahs, all the souls will become rectified. And then we will usher in the coming of the Messianic era, right? The Messianic era, which we'll talk about next week. So the question is, can we know who our parent soul was, right? Because our soul was down here on earth before, and now we are a part of that soul which came down many times. So can we know? So this, we'll read text 10. Now, I want to note there are so many books out there and so many videos on YouTube of people who remember previous lifetimes. That is a complex subject on what level it relates to this, because there are all sorts of, there's kind of like soul science, soul mechanics. Then you have consciousness in the world, which kind of floats around, and we are unaware of it, right? We are unaware of all sorts of signals which are around the world. You know, sometimes you walk into like a store and you hear the song that you were just thinking about, right? But you didn't hear it outside. It's like maybe your brain picked up a signal which you didn't hear, right? There are all sorts of signals in the world which aren't even considered metaphysical. They're not even considered spiritual. Just we don't have any way to define them clearly. So when there's people who pick up different consciousness of or different memories, not necessarily is it fully related to the idea of reincarnation. I don't know. I don't know. Even that is mysterious. But there are all sorts of ideas which take different forms in the universe, which we don't have a handle on how to define them. There are all sorts of ideas we don't necessarily have a handle. We do know that there are all sorts of different animals that have all sorts of senses that we don't have. So we know there are senses which are outside of our five senses and our consciousness, right? So I can't answer. I don't know if those are the same thing as reincarnation or not. There are some stories in Jewish thought of people having previous memories, and for whatever reason, they say, oh, my job in this life is to rectify this. You know, there are some stories. At the same time, there's stories of people saying that, and they were criminals, right? And it sounded like they were saying, like, my job is to extract all your wealth and whatever and do this with it. And they were really, really convincing. So let's read text 10 and see if we can know who we were.
It is impossible to do so to a justice of an incarnated soul or not, unless one is the recipient of mystical communication in this regard. You may wonder, how then will we know the purpose for which we enter this world? Which mitzvah we must scrupulously perform, or which transgression we must especially avoid? The answers are naturally ingrained in us. We experience natural affinity and longing to perform a certain mitzvah, and that mitzvah is critical to our present inclination, or our inclination strives especially hard to entice us to commit a particular sin, for it is the very same sin in which we blundered during our previous life.
All right, so it is impossible to deduce or intuit whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not. Now, it's notable that just like our soul has an individual body, when our soul is created, it takes on a personality, because there's many levels of personality which are metaphysical, which are subconscious, which ride onto our soul before we're born, right? So even though we do not necessarily know the story, now there's one of the Kabbalists actually says, he says, gee, it's good we don't know previous life. What happened? Because if we did, people would probably end up like killing each other. They'd be like, hey, you again, you murdered me last life. I'm going to take you down. All right. That's what would happen inevitably. We would be obsessed with the previous life. So he says, even though we do not know our previous lifetime, every person has certain challenges that keep repeating in their life. They have certain drives, things that they like, things that they don't like. And those things can act as clues to what your life's mission is, right? So even though we do not know our previous life, God is putting us here for a specific mission, which has to do with our previous life, right? God is putting us here for that purpose. We have a mission here. So God sets us up. And when we look at our lives, sometimes we can't see it, but sometimes when we tell somebody else, they see clearly, like, this is something you need to work on, right? And those are the guides with which we are able to succeed in fulfilling our mission and rectify the souls from the previous life. So here's actually a letter from the Rebbe, which talks about this. Text 11.
Replying to your letter in which you informed me that you accepted and are implementing my directives regarding forest study classes and giving charity. But as far as the situation at home, your marital harmony appears only superficially to have improved, while the underlying reality remains unsatisfactory. I already told you in my previous letters that it would be challenging. You are meant to find it. For the success of your life's mission, hinges upon your superior marital harmony. Mystical teachings reveal that rare individuals are born with original souls. The rest of us are reincarnation. We return to complete the fulfillment of the mitzvah that we missed in previous lifetime. Certainly, we are obligated in all of the mitzvah in every lifetime, but the specific mitzvah we committed in earlier incarnations are critical to the rectification of our souls and rectification of this world. Using the evil inclination as a guide, we can identify the mitzvah that determine the outcome of our life's mission. Our inclination opposes the mitzvah that we finalized in previous lifetimes, but only to the degree necessary to create free choice between good and evil. By contrast, it unleashes a fierce storm of opposition, which countless hurdles and challenges, or with countless hurdles and challenges, when we approach a mitzvah that we failed to fulfill on previous incarnations. Therefore, your many hurdles to marital harmony reveal its indispensability to your rectification. Do whatever it takes to achieve harmony.
All right. So one might think, when you have a mitzvah which is extra difficult for you to do, our first reaction is to say, it's not for me. It's not for me. This one's not for me. That one's for me, right? But the truth is everybody is created with what's called an evil inclination. Evil inclination is a part of your soul which tries to get you to stop completing your mission, in order that when you complete your mission, it should be with free choice, right? If you knew your mission and you knew the whole reason why you were born is to do some mitzvah, would anything stop you from doing it? Well, you would not have free choice anymore. You would say, this is why I'm created, right? So God creates this whole system because mitzvahs cannot be done just because we want to do the mitzvah. They have to be done out of free choice. So God creates a system that challenges us. A lot of times, the mitzvahs that we're challenged with are very relevant. We got to do all mitzvahs, but the mitzvahs that we're challenged with are the mitzvahs that are very relevant to rectifying our souls. Perhaps the mitzvahs that we didn't complete in our previous life. So here the Rebbe tells this guy, he says, you find marital harmony challenging. So, what a lot of people would want to do nowadays in this culture, and divorce rates, we can see it from divorce rates, and they say, you know what? I mean, people do this all the time. Relationships are not for me, right? Relationships are not for me. I mess up relationships. They're not for me, right? People do it with friendships all the time. That's very, very common nowadays. However, the Rebbe says, wait, it's a mitzvah to get married. It's a mitzvah to be married and have peace in your home. It must be that if you are so challenged with it, it is not because it is not for you, because that's not for your body, right? For your soul, it's a mitzvah. It must be because God wants you to stand up to this challenge to rectify what your soul needs to complete. Now, this is somewhat counterintuitive for a lot of people. A lot of us say we want to do what we like, right? We want to do the mitzvahs we like, and we don't want to do the mitzvahs that we don't like. But the truth is that's a human body perspective. Our soul wants to do all the mitzvahs. So the ones that we like, we should do. but those are perhaps ones that we don't need to rectify from a previous life. Those ones are not as extremely important in fulfilling our mission because we did them in a previous life. But the ones that we are challenged with, the ones which seem like they're not for us, well, that's the evil inclination trying to do everything it can to stop us from fulfilling our mission. All right, we're going to watch a quick meditation. We just wait till after.
Today's reflection is going to help us try to relate to the idea that our souls came to the world this time around for a special purpose. A mitzvah, good act that has special value in this lifetime. Now, how can we know such a thing? To a great extent, we can't. However, there's a way that we can catch a glimpse into what is important for the soul this lifetime. And that is by way of a metaphor which we'll now visualize. Picture in your mind's eye, you are leading an army out to battle. If the militaristic imagery is not to your liking, you can imagine a game of chess. The same idea applies. You're leading your army out to battle. And you begin to become aware that your opponent, your enemy, is focused on striking you in one particular spot. Now, it hadn't occurred to you that this spot has importance. But from the fact that the enemy keeps focusing on it, keeps going after it, you begin to realize that it must have strategic importance to the enemy. As you're imagining this, shift now and think about your life and think about a mitzvah or a good deed that is inordinately difficult for you. And by inordinately, what I mean is this. We all have mitzvahs that are harder and easier for all of us. But then there are mitzvahs that by all rights should be easy. It shouldn't be so challenging. And for some inexplicable reason, we just keep having resistance in that area. Why are we having inexplicably more resistance in that area? Why? Because it has that much more strategic importance, and therefore all things in the universe being counterbalanced. Our Maker has allowed a special resistance, a special challenge to give us pushback in that one area that we most need to overcome. So imagine, connect to yourself, think of yourself, think of that area, that mitzvah is the hardest for you, the one that keeps on challenging you. And now imagine it, rather than something that you're frustrated about, imagine it as your most precious asset. So precious that the enemy is specifically focusing on it. Let's take a moment, try to think of that mitzvah that is the most difficult, and to now see it as that mitzvah which in this lifetime is apparently the most important and most impactful. We'll take a moment now to envision this, to connect to this feeling. Feel yourself being empowered, knowing that this mitzvah has so much power, so much influence. That is where the resistance is coming.
All right, so number one, it's important to know who they are, their strengths, their passions. Number two, it's important to know what's challenging for you. And that challenging thing, which is a good thing, right? That you should be able to do, that you in theory want to do, maybe in another lifetime, right? If you really want to do, that might be your mitzvah. Now there's another really important aspect, which is text 12.
From the moment that God instructed our forefather Abraham, go from your land, following which it is stated, Abram kept traveling further southward. The mystical process of the rectification of divine sparks was launched. Subsequently, by decree of divine providence, individuals traveled to the locations in which the divine sparks that these specific individuals must rectify await their redemption. Saintly individuals with spiritual vision perceive the locations in which their divine sparks await their engagement, and they take the initiative to journey to those locations. The rest of us are left at the hands of the primary cause behind all causes and the ultimate reason behind all reason. God orchestrates countless apparent causes and circumstances to bring specific individuals to the locations in which their predestined service of rectification is required.
All right, so the circumstances of our life where we're brought is actually where our mission is. You know, sometimes we feel, you know, if I was a rich man, then I will do this and I would do that, I this. But the truth is God created us exactly how we need to be created in the exact spot in the exact space. Now, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe in that note, he says that there are some seers out there who can say, oh my gosh, this is where I need to go. This is what I need to do. These were actually one of the main reasons people would go to Rebbes. They were seers. They could say, your mission is over here. That's what you need to do. You need to do this thing, and they can give you that boost and that help. But if you don't have that boost and that help, you can, instead of praying to be a rich man somewhere else, sometimes you can look exactly at your lot that you got, your space, your assets, your life, and say, what does God want me to do here? So these are the things that we have to identify. Our personal mission is by looking at our strengths and passions, seeing what we can offer, what we can do, looking at our weaknesses and struggles. What are the things that we struggle with? What mitzvahs are the mitzvahs that we wish we did better? And then looking at our circumstances. And when we put this formula together, we can focus on the mitzvahs and focus on our purpose very strongly and rectify our soul. Yes, what was your question?
You try to figure out your personal mission that you, let's say you don't know, like somebody, you said somebody else saw it and so you.
All right, there were two things I said. Sometimes people would, when they go to pray at the grave of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, this is a lot of times what they pray for. God, give me clarity in my mission. Not necessarily does clarity come in the form of a dream or being struck by lightning or some epiphany. Sometimes clarity is just knowing that you have what you need to complete your mission, right? Knowing that you don't have to go somewhere else or fight for something else. You can fight where you are. You can go and struggle where you are. Another thing I mentioned is sometimes, you know, we have a mitzvah that we struggle with. We have something we struggle with and we know it and we want to work on it. And sometimes we ask a friend, what mitzvah do you think I struggle with? You know, what do you think I could use more help on? And sometimes our friend might have a little more clarity than us, because sometimes, you know, we judge ourselves too favorably. That was another thing I said, right? How would she know? No, you know, sometimes someone could say, you know, not in a nasty way. Someone would say, like, you know, maybe, you know, sometimes people need suggestions to do mitzvahs, and they can't think of any suggestions. I do everything. And then they ask a friend, and the friend is like, well, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? And they're able to give more suggestions. That's just another. But the idea is a lot of times, and almost always, our mission is found exactly where we are with what we have. And that's where we need to search. That's where we need to grow from. All right. Now we're going to circle back, and we are going to talk about, we're going to go back to those questions in the beginning. So belief in reincarnation, is it basic to Judaism? Well, this is kind of a trick question. Basic to Judaism. So basic means, in the dictionary means, helps formulate the base or the essence. So we do believe in reincarnation. Is it the basis of Judaism? Well, for many years, many Jews didn't even know about it, right? But we know about it. It must be important to us. So Judaism is a belief, reincarnation is a belief in Judaism, but it's not necessarily a fundamental belief. In other words, if you were not aware of it, you can still function as a Jew. We said in Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. So this is also a tricky question. Part of the same soul comes down again, but each time it's actually like a new formulation of the soul. Number 3, we said a human can be reincarnated in a non-human entity. We said yes, that is possible. A reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares identity with someone lived in a previous lifetime. We said that's incorrect. The reincarnated soul has a new identity. It comes from the same soul, but has a new identity. The purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. So that's not true, right? Well, the purpose of reincarnation is actually to rectify the job of the soul in transforming the world. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. So, we said there's no penalties last class, right? There's no punishment, no penalties. It's actually a process of rehabilitation for the soul. Reincarnation is a process of rehabilitation. What? Well, so, that's also a process of rehabilitation. It's painful. Hell is painful, but it's rehabilitation. It actually works, helps the soul. Most souls today are reincarnations. We said yes. Okay, so now we are going to summarize. So now we have, what is the benefits of knowing this? So number 1, we said, well, I have so much baggage. Why do I want baggage from a previous life? So the truth is we all have a personal identity, and it actually enhances our personal identity by putting us in the world. We're not here by accident. We're not here, because our parents. Ultimately, we're here because God put our soul here on a mission. And every soul, every time you come down, that is a new mission. Augments mission with previous good deeds. So the truth is, when you do a mitzvah, the mitzvah lasts forever. When you sin, it gets washed away. But mitzvahs are eternal. So actually, when we're coming off of a previous soul, we're taking all the good things the previous soul did, and we're taking it a step further. Now, reincarnation, knowing about reincarnation, helps us realize how God has an intense master plan, right? He gives us a master plan and gives us a whole new perspective on life. Our life now becomes, when we know this, our life becomes more soul-oriented. We know that life might not go the way we expect, but it's actually because when we stand through it and we are focused on doing Torah and mitzvahs, we are fulfilling our mission in the world. And we are helping God's master plan. And finally, when we know about it, it provides role within general human mission. Now, we've mentioned in a few JLI courses about logotherapy, about Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl, for those who don't know about him, believe it or not, the Lubavitcher Rebbe there's actually a quite fascinating story with Lubavitcher Rebbe. Viktor Frankl was Jewish, and he actually wore tefillin late in his life. It's a whole long story. We watched in 2 JLI courses since I started giving JLI. But the cornerstone of his belief is human beings are here for a mission. We have a purpose. And when you know your purpose, and especially that nobody else can complete that purpose, that is the essence of happiness and survival and making it through life and living a meaningful life. So actually, his book is called Man's Search for Meaning. In his book, he talks about how he's in the Holocaust and he sees all these observant Jews are like surviving in a certain way. They're surviving in a better way. And all these, there's an amazing Holocaust survivor I spoke about him last week. But I saw this interview with him. They said, how did you survive the horrors? He said, I'll tell you the truth. I grew up in a Hasidic home with all sorts of Hasidic stories of reincarnation, of miracles, of the seers. These rabbis were able to see the world from a different perspective from God's master plan. He said, I never viewed anything as bad. He said, I never viewed anything as bad. I was so ingrained as a child that everything is part of God's plan. Everything's part of God's plan, and everything is for my soul. The bad things happen to my body are temporary, but my soul, everything is for my soul's mission. So now we're going to read from Viktor Frankl, and we will see how this can help us our perspective that we gained today of reincarnation can be very helpful for us. We're in text 13.
Thus, the routine of mental health is based on the system of tension. The tension between what one has already achieved and what one still ought to accomplish, or the gap between what one is and what one should become. Such a tension is inherent in the human being and therefore is indispensable to mental well-being. We should not then be hesitant about challenging man with a potential meaning for him to fulfill. It is only thus that we evoke his will to meaning from a state of latency.
So mental health is the tension between what one has already achieved and what one still ought to accomplish. Now, I want to add something really important today. Today we learned how our souls have a unique mission. But not only does our soul have a unique mission in its lifetime, it's relevant to our eternal soul, and it's relevant to all the times our soul came down. Everything we do in our lifetime is relevant to every time our soul came down. So this can give us determination to attain a goal. We have to go and do whatever mitzvahs we can, and we know when we have obstacles and we know, wow, these obstacles are God-given. It must be, they are extra relevant to our mission. And our mission is relevant to our soul, which is relevant to all the souls, which is relevant to all humanity, all history, and God's master plan. This can give us a changed attitude towards a circumstance and finding potential within suffering and giving us the outlook to seize every moment. These are the values we have in Israel, in the Jewish people, in the Torah. We know that when we do one mitzvah, it's transformative not only for ourselves in the moment, but for the whole world, for our soul, for eternity, for all the souls. Every challenge we go through has this very, very powerful mission that we need to accomplish, which affects the whole world and brings Mashiach. Speaking about Mashiach, there's something very interesting about today's generation. So now, while I can't tell you personally who you were in previous lives, I can kind of tell you who you were. Because there is a famous Kabbalist, the Arizal, that we mentioned in the Shari Gilgulim. He speaks about the generation before the Messianic era, the coming of Mashiach. And he speaks about who are those souls a reincarnation of? And what does it mean to us? So we'll read text 14. It's our last text of the night.
Jewish women and girls play an essential role in the highly critical mission of bringing about the true and complete redemption. The women played an indispensable role in our exodus from Egypt. Indeed, our sages state that our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt in the merit of the deeds of the righteous women. Talmud Sota 11b. As we have discussed repeatedly, they fulfilled this role in each subsequent generation. This is especially true of our present time, for we are the reincarnation of the generation that left Egypt. Indeed, we can literally observe the Jewish women and girls naturally predisposed far more readily than the menfolk to the idea of immediately leaving the exile. Less effort is required to convince them that we must leave this exile already than is required to inspire them then.
All right, so here's what it says in the Torah about the Jewish people leaving Egypt. It says the Jewish people left Egypt in the merit of the faith of the women. Now, for those of you who don't know, women have a lot easier time having faith than men. So when Moses came and told the Jewish people, you're leaving Egypt, a lot of the men were like, oh, come on. Don't you know science? But the women actually believed him. And they prepared instruments, the Torah tells us. They had faith. They said, wow, this is happening. Now, we are the reincarnation of that generation, the generation of the people of the deserts. That's who are the reincarnation. So in Jewish tradition, before Mashiach comes, there has been, and there will be, a major focus on the Jewish women. Now, we know that Jewish women in Jewish education, the Jewish education for women has become so strong in the last century. starting with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the reason is because just like that exile, the Jewish people left because of the faith of the women, it's the belief that we're the same souls, part of the same souls coming down, and therefore this exile will be through the faith of the Jewish women. Some would even say the reason why there is such a big struggle with feminism in the world is not necessarily is that feminism a good value, but it's, if you zoom out, there's an inner calling of women. There's an inner calling of women. Now, some women, they're like, okay, we need to be professionals just like men or whatever it is. I mean, in general, there's this whole mix up of genderhood and everything like that nowadays. But some would say that there's this inner calling of the woman's soul, which is coming out. And that's why it's so important that women, there's been such a big focus in Jewish history. In the last century, there's been a major focus on Jewish education for women. It's been a big deal. It's the first time in many, many years that it's been like that. Anyways, women, keep doing your job, and hopefully we'll all complete our mission and rectify our souls, do the things which might be challenging for us, but do it when you know you're part of a bigger plan and we're all on the same team. We can do it with more zeal, and we can be successful and bring Mashiach. It's the summary.
Lesson 5. Where we go again. 1. Adam possessed the Jewish master soul that ultimately branched out into the 600,000 souls that received the Torah at Mount Sinai. All subsequent Jewish souls are offshoots of these soul roots. 2. The 600,000 primary souls were each given a part of the world to perfect through fulfillment of the 613 mitzvot. When a soul accomplishes its mission, it itself also gains rectification and elevation. 3. Every root soul must also study each of the Torah's 4 layers of teaching and uncover its unique part in Torah. 4. Few, if any, of the original souls completed all 613 mitzvot, nor the required study during their original lifetimes. Reincarnation provides souls with additional opportunities to complete their missions and the rectification of the world and themselves. 5. When a person dies, all the refined elements of their soul return to heaven. A new soul, built from the elements that were left unrectified, is then grafted from the stem soul and returned to this world. 6. As a general rule, our souls are reincarnations, but it is impossible to be conscious of or to accurately sense the experiences of our previous lifetimes. 7. Clues to the nature of our soul's unique task in this world can be gleaned from A, our strengths and passions, B, our weaknesses and struggles, and C, our unique life circumstances. 8. The Kabbalistic view of reincarnation does not deny us our personal identity. Each of us is a complete and unique individual who is simultaneous and integrally linked to a far greater reality. Reincarnation ascribes greater importance to our existence and provides each of us a unique role in the overall human mission.
Thank you very much for coming. Any questions? You can leave if you'd like. I want to